Episode 161 of the Read to Lead podcast is brought to you in part by cloud accounting software FreshBooks with a free month-long trial just for you. To claim it, visit freshbooks.com/read-to-lead and enter Read to Lead in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Ultimately, service is about taking action on behalf of others. What can I do to make them freer, stronger, more independent of me?
Welcome to the Read to Lead podcast with Jeff Brown. Jeff believes that if you desire to achieve true success in business and in life, then consistent and intentional reading is a must. The Read to Lead podcast will not only help you narrow this ever-important reading list, but also bring you key insights and valuable feedback from some of today's most successful and inspiring authors. And now, here's Jeff.
Hi there, nice to meet you. I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that is dedicated to your personal and professional growth. We talk about things like leadership, of course, and also personal growth, productivity, career, business, marketing, sales, and entrepreneurship. It's leadership getting the focus today, as you and I are going to be joined by Angie Morgan. She's the co-author of Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Among other things, I'll be asking Angie about how and why leadership is often misunderstood, the importance of mindset and what it means to your leadership success, the 4 keys to being credible, and much, much more. We'll soon be reopening registration to Read to Lead University, our members-only book club. Right now, we're reading a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. We'll be meeting at the end of the month as a group to discuss that book live. And if you'd like to be a part of this process each and every month and not only spur yourself on to more reading, but also go from learning new things to actually putting what you learn into action, then Read to Lead University is for you. If you're in the States, you can get your name on the waiting list by texting the word university to 33444. And of course, anywhere in the world, you can simply visit readtoleaduniversity.com and enter your name and email address at the top of the page. That way, the next time registration opens, you'll be first in line. We'd love to see you there real soon. And we're thankful to cloud accounting software FreshBooks for sponsoring this episode of Read to Lead. You know, just a moment ago, I was looking at all the features in the new and improved version of FreshBooks, and I realized there are some key features here that I myself, as a user for years, had not even tapped into yet. Things like being able to track your expenses with your phone. With the FreshBooks app, you can take pictures of your receipts and make claiming your expenses 1,000,000 times easier. Why am I not doing that yet? Gee whiz. One of the many things I appreciate about FreshBooks is it helps you avoid maybe what would otherwise be awkward talk with a client about past due payments. Yeah, FreshBooks automates late payment email reminders. Thank you. So you can spend less time chasing payments and more time working your magic. Of course, you know FreshBooks makes invoicing easy. They give you the ability to customize your invoice. There's also a super handy deposit feature so you can invoice for a payment up front as you're kicking off a project. Many reasons to try FreshBooks, especially now is there's no risk. For 30 days, you can get access to every one of those features I just mentioned and more for no obligation. Just visit freshbooks.com/read-to-lead and you can take advantage of that free month-long trial. Again, that's freshbooks.com/read-to-lead. And when you get there, be sure and enter Read to Lead in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Angie Morgan is the founder of LeadStar and served as a captain of the United States Marine Corps. And not long after launching her professional career, she saw a need in the workplace. Professionals consistently showed that they had a capacity to be leaders, but no one was actually helping them do that. And that's why she founded LeadStar, to help you understand how you can achieve greater success by implementing leadership practices into your work routine. And not long after that, Angie and a couple of her good friends, co-authors Courtney Lynch and Sean Lynch, wrote a book called Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Angie, welcome to the Read to Lead podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, Jeff.
My wife's name is Annie, and I've called her Andy a couple of times, so that you're in good company.
No, well, it's funny because that always seems to happen. On Amazon, when our book first came out, it was for Annie Morgan, and we had a hard time locating and making that fixed, correcting that. So I've been called many things. Annie sounds like a great one.
Well, let's begin at the beginning. Let's define what you and your co-authors mean by the word spark. What kind of person embodies that word?
When we think of sparks, we think about the doers, the thinkers, the game changers in professional environments who apply the disciplines of leadership to their challenges and achieve results. So with our book Spark, we outline what, again, their seemingly mysterious skill set that they're demonstrating actually is. It's about behavior. And we want to help any professional who's seeking greater success in their world understand those behaviors that can make them stand out too.
Who would you say the book is ultimately for? Is there a specific individual in mind to what you just said, or is it broader than that?
It's broader than that, which I think maddened our publisher. They're like, can't you just pick an audience who it'll help us market your book so much better? And we thought about it, and it really comes from our military backgrounds. We all learned leadership in Courtney and I in the Marine Corps, Sean in the Air Force. And what's interesting about our military background is that everyone learns how to lead. So regardless of your rank or your position, or, again, if you have zero responsibilities for team members, you learn leadership. And so it really is a message for everyone, because everyone has an opportunity to lead and to be a spark. And so it is a broad definition. I know that it sits on the business shelf, but if I'm even a stay-at-home mom and I work out of the home and I participate in school environments, this book is relevant for you. So it is a little maddening, but leadership is leadership, and we wanted to make it accessible for those who are interested.
Yeah, we all influence someone, right?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Well, to many, leadership, and I've seen this prevalent in some circles still today, is about nothing more than people in power. Why do you believe, Angie, that leadership is often misunderstood?
That was one of the biggest differences Courtney, Sean, and I experienced when we transitioned out of the military, was how the word leadership was used in our former lives and in our current lives. In the military, you express leadership. It's a behavior. And then we started working in the private sector, and what we realized quickly was that people often referred to their management teams as their leadership teams, as if the only people who could express leadership were managers, and management and leadership were used interchangeably to suggest that leadership was positional authority. And so our experience is that leadership isn't about positional authority. It's one of those myths of leadership. It's going back to behavior. I mean, if you've ever had a bad boss, you realize that just because you're a manager doesn't make you a leader. But we also knew the reverse was true. You can lead without being a manager.
Well, why do you say in the book, Angie, that leadership development is going to make us uncomfortable?
I think any development makes you uncomfortable, mostly because it's about behavior changes. Like if I were to ask you, why don't you spend the day opening all the doors in your house with the wrong hand? It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable because you're going to have to think about it. And that's a safe risk that you're taking, right? It's opening a door with a different hand. There's no social risk really associated with that.
Right.
And so we think about leadership development. We think about our relationship with people, and there's risk there. So part of, we dedicate a chapter on confidence, for example, and how to develop your confidence. And there's some risk because it requires you to face your fears and to gain a new approach to facing your fears. It could mean that you're speaking up more. It could mean that you're holding, somebody accountable or having an uncomfortable dialogue related to it. And that makes people uncomfortable when you challenge their behaviors.
Our last guest, Adam Hansen, co-wrote a book called Outsmart Your Instincts. And similarly, Angie writes about the need to challenge our instincts in this book. Talk about, Angie, the concept of cognitive flexibility and why we need to be wary of our natural inclinations.
I think that's one of those myths on leadership, right? That leaders go with their gut. They trust their instincts, but a lot of our instincts are just flat out wrong when it comes to building influence with other people. think about if there's a problem or a mistake, instinctually we want to distance ourselves or place blame on the person next to us or throw our colleague under the bus. Not leadership behaviors, but certainly instincts. It's part of our human nature, again, to protect ourselves and protect our ego at all costs. And so cognitive flexibility and cognitive discipline, which are two things we write about in Spark, means that we can change. I mean, leadership is a head game. We can change our behavior. We can demonstrate flexibility, different approaches to problems. I think we're really good doing this when it comes to the managerial tasks of our work. Like, say that, the printer's jammed. We, create a solution, or say that the caterer doesn't show up for our lunchtime meeting. We can call and order pizza. We demonstrate flexibility when it comes to the things in our work, but do we apply the same approach with the people in our world? Like, say that you work with Sally and you've worked with Sally forever and you just get so sick of the way Sally always responds to some of your questions. Well, you can't change Sally. You can't change you. And if you apply a similar flexibility to your approach with Sally, you could possibly get a different outcome to your relationship and possibly improve your relationship. So that's cognitive flexibility.
Yeah, there is a fair amount of time in the book spent talking about behavior and mindset, and an intriguing topic to me, the work of Carol Dweck. Is mentioned a few times. One of the best illustrations of the importance of mindset in my reading, I thought, was your journey to getting your MBA. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there was a time not too long ago in my career where I realized that, my English major and my Marine Corps background and my, strong desire to succeed would get me pretty far in running a business. But there came a point, I think about year 8 or 9 with running Lead Star, that I realized I just didn't have the business background, that solid foundation to help lead the business further. It was like you ran into a wall you needed to get over. And I thought about going back to business, or thought about going to grad school, specifically business school, but I was really fearful because I was bad at math, or so I thought. I think that, we get introduced to ideas when we're young that we just cling to. And perhaps I had a math teacher, and I can't remember, but this was the impression from me being young, was that I was bad at math. And so I didn't take math in college. And I was really intimidated by going to grad school because obviously in business school it's a math-intensive program, rightfully so. So I went with it. I found a school. I didn't have to take, in an executive program, I didn't have to take, graduate school entrance exam. And I applied and I got accepted, but my acceptance was contingent upon me passing a quantitative reasoning course. And that frightened me. And the University of Michigan, they were gracious. They gave me study material. They gave me a test day. They gave me online practice courses, but it was up to me to pass. And it was funny, through the process of preparing for this quantitative reasoning course, I realized that I wasn't bad at math. I was actually slow at math, which is a really big difference. It just takes me longer to problem solve than it does the average person. And it was one of those moments in my life where I think I had a fixed mindset about my relationship with math. Like, I'd shy away from it. I wouldn't attempt it. I wouldn't jump right in until I really confronted the issue and realized, actually, no, this isn't right. For 20 plus years, I've been carrying this belief about my abilities that is just flat out wrong. And it was kind of shocking. And actually, in many ways, it was wonderful because it made me wonder, too, what other misconceptions I had about my talents and my abilities. And that's kind of exciting to rethink that.
It certainly is. And as you're talking, I'm like, you need to have a conversation with my wife because she's convinced she's bad at math too. And I don't think that's the case. And if it makes you feel any better, I barely squeaked by in calculus and statistics myself. Almost didn't make it, but with a little tutoring finally got through it. So I certainly had my struggles in that area as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Don't get me started talking about statistics.
Oh, yeah. Not my strong suit by any means.
They're not my strong suit, but it's like you can do it. You just have to appreciate. It just might not come naturally.
Yeah. Well, chapter 3 of the book, I think it is, introduces the 4 keys to being credible. Angie, would you be willing to unpack these for us?
Yeah, when we were writing Spark and thinking about behaviors that make people influential, credibility obviously is one of those skills. We think about the people who are motivated and inspired and influenced by, they're credible to us. It's not because, again, they're demonstrating this elusive, mysterious skill set. It's because they're really good at influencing their credibility through behavior. And we broke it down to 4 keys that help you influence credibility with other people. So what's really interesting about credibility is that Jeff, you hold information that will determine whether or not I'm credible in your eyes. And so you're the keeper of my credibility. And for me to be credible in your eyes, I kind of have to figure out what makes me credible to you. And so part of the journey that we wanted to send people on when they thought about credibility was, first and foremost, the first key is really understand what's expected of you in your relationships. What does success look like in those relationships? For me, for example, coming from the Marine Corps, I really respect people who are on time. I mean, that is one of my, and not everybody feels that way, right? But if you want to be credible, you show up a couple minutes early and you're prepared right when we hit go. And you did, Jeff, by the way. You're very credible.
but how do you feel about those who cancel their first interview and reschedule?
I already forgot about that. But again, it's like, you have to figure out, it's like we all have different things. And if you just go by what's bright lined in your job description, thinking that that's what's going to make you credible, it's just not the case. And so it starts off again, first, really understand the expectations of those around you. The second is that you can influence your credibility by meeting the commitments that you yourself make too. We have this phrase called the say-do gap. What's the space between your actions and your words? Because that space is going to determine how credible you are with others. And the third way to build and influence credibility is to think about who you work with and around. The reality is that we're not lone wolves. We're pack animals. We thrive on connection, and often our success is connected to the people around us. So as somebody who's building influence, how well do you clearly communicate your intent and expectations with others? Say that you and I are working together, and me being credible to you means, hey, we've got to get this project done by Friday. This is what I think needs to be involved. Just sharing just some thoughts about what success looks like, because there's nothing more frustrating than working with somebody who you work together on a project, you turn it into them, and they say, well, gosh, that wasn't what I wanted at all. And, you lose your credibility by not being clear about what it is that you expect. And the final key to credibility is also having those conversations related to accountability when expectations are missed. So again, if you and I are working together on a project, I share with you what is expected. It absolutely doesn't come, what we agreed upon. Just having the courage to have the conversation to say, whoa, what happened here? How did I screw up? How did you miss this expectation? Could we talk about it so we can not do this again in the future? That takes a little bit of courage for people to talk about problems with a sense of accountability. But if we think about the people who are credible in our life, is that they're not afraid to have those difficult conversations because they're committed to us. And we all want to get better together.
I know, as I look back on the great leaders that I had a chance to work with, and for the ones I have the most respect for, are the ones who weren't afraid to admit when they'd made a mistake.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I think our knee-jerk reaction when something doesn't turn out the way that it should is to say, well, what the heck happened? Why did you do this? But really, again, this is cognitive, those cognitive functions. It's really to stop, pause, hold your instinct and say, you know what, this happened. I probably contributed to it some way. How was I not clear? Can you give me feedback on how we can be clear in the future? That invites candor. That puts, people off the defense. They can have an honest conversation.
Well, I'm big about living an intentional life, being an intentional leader, and I've heard a lot here the last few years, especially about this idea of intentional leadership. Talk about, in your view, Angie, the role that plays in leadership, intentionality.
Yeah, we dedicate an entire chapter to making decisions that matter, so acting with intention. A lot of our thoughts about this chapter come with the reality that we work with business professionals all the time. And it's surprising and sometimes saddening that many just lack vision for what their life could be. And we, of course, get excited about the potential that we see within people if they focus their efforts on activities that propel them forward versus tread water and don't really get to the direction that they, or, find the direction that they are on. So when we decided to write this chapter, we really wanted to start off in the importance of vision and your aspirations for yourself. And in many ways, we like the phrase, we'd like people to think about how they can honor their future self with actions today. Because I think we all have a sense of we may not have the details figured out, of what we want our life to be like in 20 years. So, again, like, where do we want to be? What type of retirement do we want? Like, we can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. But what we do today, and the clearer we can be about where we're going, directly will shape that future. Many professionals, are overwhelmed by the abundance of opportunities, right in front of them. We have this mindset that we can do anything. And the reality is that, you probably can do anything, but you can't do everything. And if you can just focus your attention on the activities that you feel are going to drive the result you seek, you're going to find that, again, you're honoring your future self, and you're going to be much more focused in your pursuit with whatever you do.
Well, Angie and her co-authors dedicate a chapter as well to service-based leadership. Angie, what are some of the ways that we can demonstrate that kind of leadership?
Service was unique to my development in the Marine Corps, and I think it really serves as the foundation of the Marine Corps' leadership philosophy. And it is about prioritizing your team's needs before your own. And we were taught as young officers that officers eat last. And it's a simple expression to share that to the junior-most person on your team, that they matter. You're prioritizing their needs. And if there's no food left, you're going to go without because you care about them. You're committed to them. And that's, again, one expression of it. But you can bring this into your work environment by thinking about the people around you. How much time do you spend thinking about them, empathizing with them, seeing the world from, their view and their perspective? If you took just, 5 minutes and thought about the lives of the people around you, you could start to see perhaps where they are on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is it security? Are they really just struggling right now security-wise to make ends meet, or do they have a challenge at home that's, preventing them to contributing to their fullest at work? How can you help there? Or is it, community? Do they not have friends at work? Do they feel like they're alone? Do they not have a career mentor? How can you fill that need for them? And ultimately, service is about taking action on behalf of others. It's what are the little things that I can do to empower someone? It's not how can I coddle them or how can I pamper them or baby them. It's no. It's about empowering. What can I do to make them freer, stronger, more independent of me? And, it could be that you mentor them. You direct them to professional development opportunities. You help facilitate or problem solve in an aspect of their life, whatever it could be. But it's just making sure that you take the time to do that you're not just this taskmaster. Get this done, get that done. Friday we need this delivered. It's you're thinking more holistically about the people around you.
Well, share about the role, if you would, Angie, that confidence plays in leadership. What are some things we can do to achieve a steady level of confidence?
I like that you brought up, Jeff, the concept of level, because it reminds me that confidence isn't a skill like golf or math, for that matter, where you just keep practicing and you miraculously get better. Confidence is an emotion, which helps you understand why it's present or why it's absent when you need it the most. So we talk about 4 ways to build confidence, but I'll say that one of the most important ways for me, and I think it's different for everybody, is this concept of self-talk. What are you saying in those moments when you need confidence the most? Are you saying, gosh, I don't know if I can do this, or geez, I hope people don't find me out that I'm a fake and a fraud? Or are you saying, you know what, I've spent my career building up to this moment. I've got this. You know, what you say actually has a powerful influence over the outcome. And so it's just starting by just paying attention to your thoughts as it relates to confidence.
I don't remember where I read this, but it was recent about leveraging third person when doing the self-talk, and that there's some power in that. Jeff, you can do this. Angie, you have the skills necessary to pull this off. That made a difference in how effective that self-talk was. Have you done any research or reading on that?
I haven't, but you're going to send me on a journey with that. No, but I can see that that's really valuable, though. I mean, we can get confidence from other people who can, again, that was one of another ways to build confidence is surround ourselves with positive influences. So that definitely helps, having somebody else saying, Angie, you've got this. But doing it to yourself when, those people are absent, I could see is very beneficial.
I'll see if I can track that down and send you the link. I'm racking my brain trying to remember what that was now. Well, I have some questions for you, Angie, that aren't directly related to the book. But before I get to those, is there anything else from the book you want to make sure that we know?
Well, I think just leaving people with the idea that if leadership is a behavior, leadership is a choice. So no matter where you are on your leadership development journey, you can opt into these skills. And with Spark, I hate to admit this because I like to sell books, but reading is one of the lowest forms of learning.
Yeah.
Like, I love reading and I get so many great ideas, but it's not enough per se to build your leadership skills. And online with Spark, we have a tremendous amount of resources, whether it's a book club that you want to kick off. There's such great power and actually growth when you share your experiences and challenge each other in that type of environment. So we've got book club guides. We also have self-reflection and team activities. So if you want to use Spark as an informal team training opportunity, please, use these, reproduce these resources. That's what they're there for, because reading certainly can inspire you, but you can't just read a book on swimming and learn how to swim. You actually have to experience, do things differently. And so I'd like to offer that up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's one thing to learn. It's another thing to do. It's funny you mention that because just a couple of months ago, after doing this podcast for 3.5 years, I was like, I want to take this to the next level. And so I started a book club. And it's a club filled with Read to Lead listeners who we come together once a month and chat about the book we're reading. Sometimes we're joined by the authors. But the whole impetus behind that was to take what we're doing beyond just filling our heads with knowledge and actually helping each other put it into action. So I wholeheartedly agree with you there. I want you to, we've talked about the book you've written. Let's talk about some books you've read and enjoyed over the years. What would you say, Angie, are maybe 2 or 3 titles that immediately come to mind as having had the biggest impact on you and why?
Oh gosh, where to start? And so going back to, I'm an English major. I'll say in recent years, one of my most favorite books was Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See. I thought that was just a beautiful, beautiful story. And it was such a sad story, but it just made me fall in love with historical fiction. I do read business books, but I find I am so inspired by, literature and fiction. So I read a lot of fiction. So I think that was one of the most profound books in recent years. I think one of my favorite books of all times, though, is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I read it in college. I studied it in college, and her poetry within her work.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I've got some new books I need to seek out now.
Oh yeah. Oh, I could go on. I mean, we could just have a conversation right now if you'd like for the rest of the time about all the great books we've read. I read Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, and I loved it. He talks in his book about service-based leadership in a band, because you think about him touring with the same group and how do they stay together. And I loved one of his statements. He was talking about his bandmates, but the secret to keeping them together is that you have to realize at some point that the person sitting next to you is far more important than you give them credit for. And if they feel the same way, then the relationship works. I'm paraphrasing. But I thought that was really brilliant.
That is, yeah. Well, a skill I think every leader needs to possess, and I'm guessing you probably agree, is the ability to be an effective communicator and public speaker, particularly. I'd be curious to know, Angie, maybe a tip or two from you. What are your tips for delivering an impactful and memorable public talk? This is something that I know you do a fair amount of.
Yeah, especially with the new material. One of the things that I like to do is talk to myself. I talk to myself all the time. And
it's not just me.
No, I think you have to get a really good sense of your speech patterns. And you have to get a sense of how words feel and how they're comfortable they are just rolling off your tongue. So I think a lot of people spend time writing a speech, but you have to put the notes away at some point and just try to communicate the speech. And I think that's where authentic communication comes from, just really using your words. And, with all the keynotes that we do, I think we hear, oh, wow, that was a really great spontaneous comment. And I'll be the first to admit, it's like, not all comments are spontaneous. It's just that I've been practicing them for a very long time.
Well, I want to know, Angie, if you know, what's next for you? What are you and your team working on now that you're excited about? I know the book is only been out a couple of months, so maybe the foreseeable future is getting the word out about that, but be curious to know if there's anything else you're working on.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'm curious about right now. Working inside businesses, I'm always surprised and interested in employees who work, with publicly traded companies, especially. How they're so conscientious. I think I'm just curious about that. What makes somebody feel like the business is theirs and they have to protect it and be great stewards of the resources within? And so I'm curious about that. What makes somebody conscientious? I have some ideas, but I want to spend a little bit more time researching that. So I feel like conscientious employees are some of the greatest contributors to organization success. So I'm curious what makes somebody conscientious. And I'm also interested in relationships. I think with the pace in which we work and technology and how many barriers are to relationships, but how we can get back to more sources of inspiration, support, and tribal-like environments where we can grow from those experiences.
Excellent. Well, our guest today has been Angie, or as I like to call her sometimes, Andy Morgan, co-author of Spark: How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Angie, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jeff, for the opportunity.
I finally remembered where it was I read about self-talk and using third person for even stronger results. And that was in a book from a guest just a few weeks ago. The book is called Reach, a new strategy to help you step outside your comfort zone, rise to the challenge, and build confidence. It's by Andy Malinsky. Andy was also the first book featured in our new Read to Lead University book club, and even came by and joined us for our live chat. Just another reason to consider joining, because occasionally we are met by the authors themselves inside those live chats online. readtoleaduniversity.com, by the way, to find out more about that. Check out some of Angie's resources at sparkslead.us. That's sparkslead.us. All these links and resources, of course, can always be found at the show notes page created especially for this episode. And that is readtoleadpodcast.com/161 for episode 161. Please be kind by visiting our sponsor, by taking advantage of that free month-long trial, freshbooks.com/read to lead, and enter Read to Lead in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Are you subscribed to the podcast? When you are, you ensure that each new episode is pushed to your mobile device without you even having to think about it. So make sure you go into your app of choice and click subscribe. We also hope you'll rate and review the show in iTunes or in Stitcher or wherever it is you listen. And with that, I say thanks to Marianne, who left a recent 5-star rating and review in iTunes, calling Read to Lead the all-around best podcast. Thank you so much, Marianne. I appreciate that. And my parents especially appreciate it because you left that review on their 55th wedding anniversary. So you're awesome. Well, that's going to do it for this week. I look forward to seeing you next time for the next episode of the Read to Lead podcast.
Thanks so much for listening to the Read to Lead podcast. As a subscriber, we challenge you to be more than just a passive listener. Become a vital member of the community. Visit us on the web at readtoleadpodcast.com. Until next time, remember, leaders read and readers lead.